Okay, sounds like we have audio working now. Hello, everyone, again. Yes, okay, so thank you all for joining us for another edition of At Home with EFF. This is our Pride Month edition. And we have a wonderful roster of people here with us to talk about a bunch of different issues that we all care about. Um, First off, I would like to mention that we have if you are here to support the work at EFF, you can visit eff.org/EFF at home. And that way you can support EFF and all that we do. Also, we have live captioning for the event so that you can read along for everything that we discussed today. And you can find that live captioning at eff.org/live. So, hello everyone. Jennifer, SX, Brianna, Diamond, Hadi, thank you all so much for joining. I am thrilled that you're here.
Thank you for having me or us.
Of course, of course.
Thank you for having us.
Very excited to be here.
Thank you. So I guess we can start the conversation off. I just want to hear a little bit about each of you and the organization that you're representing and the kind of work that you're doing there. So maybe Jennifer, could you start us off?
Sure, happy to start, and thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be joining you all today. So my name is Jennifer Brody. I work with a global human rights nonprofit called Access Now. I am based in our Washington, D.C. office. We do digital rights work similar to EFF in many ways, and I mostly focus on efforts in Washington, D.C., lobbying Capitol Hill and what have you. And then just a bit more about Access Now. We have many different arms of the organization, and one of our arms is the Digital Security Helpline, which is a pro bono service that helps users at risk, from journalists, human rights defenders, members of civil society, ensure that they are safe online. So happy to provide more information about that later.
That's great, thank you. We definitely have a lot of shared interest here at EFF, so I'm thrilled to be supporting the work that you're doing at Access Now. Next, I'd love to hear from Diamond. Can I first just say I am a huge fan of Marsha's Plate. The conversations that you and Z and Mia have there, like on the weekly basis, is just so vital. But I'll let you talk about that. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to.
Oh gosh, well, thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm so glad to be here. If I'm just naming out titles, I'm the executive director of Black Trans Women's Inc., and I am the creator and producer of Marsha's Plate podcast. At Black Trans Women's Inc., we are an organization that really is about uplifting the voices of Black trans women here in the States, and really pushing and organizing to get like actual tangible care in our needs and our and provide survival mechanisms for Black trans women who are are in marginalizing situations, aka living in America. And we work around housing, healthcare, and empowerment, and just there's so many things that we are doing. We have a program that is getting people who we just got funded for a program that's getting people out of jail who family is not supporting them, and they have small bonds, because if you remember, like last year, a girl died in Rikers Island. Her bond was $500. Yeah. So if somebody could have paid her small bond out of her to get out of jail, she probably wouldn't be dead now. So we wanted to create a program where we can get people who can't afford to get, $1 million bonds, but something small and easy. That's what we're working to do. And Marsha's Play is a podcast. For me, I'm still a YouTuber, but I had a YouTube channel for about 10 years. And I wanted something, if I want to be honest, I had gained a little weight. So I stopped trying to be on camera. So I transitioned to like a podcast until I got comfortable with my weight. Then I'm like, hey, okay, let's go. But I started the podcast because in 2016, when people were talking to trans people during that election of the orange guy, I was disappointed by the conversations that they were, not conversations, the questions that they were asking trans people when they put a mic in their face. It was specifically revolved around bathroom bill, and that was like the hot button topic at the time. They rarely talked to marginalized people, first of all, and they rarely talked about things that we really, really care about as far as like housing and workforce discrimination and just some really big issues that really affects our lives and our survival. And because we live in this amazing time that we have the internet, and there's not that many gatekeepers, I was like, oh, I could start a podcast and really have a platform. And so we are a podcast that shares that experience and examines culture and analysis and analyze it from from a Black trans feminist perspective, with 2 trans women as a host and a trans man as a host. So we got the,
Yeah. Thank you. I think we can all agree that work you're doing is so vital for not just the communities you're serving, but like the world. And I'm thrilled to have you here because these are issues that I think it's safe to say traditionally, like the work that the EFF has been focusing, or digital civil liberties groups, haven't had a lot of time to focus on. So having you here is truly a blessing.
Thank you.
I would love to hear next from SX. Also thrilled to have you here. Tell me a little bit about yourself and the work you're up to.
Hello. Yes, I am so pleased to be here. My name is SX Noir, and I am the self-proclaimed thought leader of sex technology. I believe in the radical inclusion of sex workers in sex technology and tech equity for sex workers. I am here representing Hacking Hustling, which is an organization of sex workers and allies created for a post-Foster world on how we navigate digital space and the direct attention that we need to our particular interests and how we navigate, digital space. I have many things that I'm a part of. I'll just keep it very brief. I'm an activist by trade, a sex worker activist, a host, a moderator, all these things. I have a podcast called the Thought Leader Podcast, where I navigate conversations on the intersection of sex, technology, and love. We navigate privacy, security, sex workers, dating, and also just what sex tech is. There's a lot of confusion around it, and so I like to give space for that understanding. I am also the vice president of the Women of Sex Technology, an organization of women identifying people who are navigating sex tech and sex positivity. And last but not least, I am also the host of a Corona Thoughts docuseries, where I am just documenting how COVID-19 has impacted the sex industry and what that means for us. And so I'll be kind of speaking on that throughout today. I'm very happy to be here. I'm really happy we're able to convene in digital space together. And so thank you for having me.
Great to hear. Thank you so much. That's really cool stuff. I can't wait to hear more about the work you're doing. Well, all the work you're doing, but especially the work you're doing around how coronavirus is affecting the sex industry. Something that's close to my heart here at EFF. Hadi, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Beirut. I believe that you're in Beirut.
Yes, correct.
Tell us about yourself and the work you're doing over there.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Hadi, and a few years ago, like 3 years ago, we started Beirut Pride, which is the first pride in the Arab world, and unfortunately, so far, the only one. So we still have some rough times, some challenging realities that you have to deal with, because Lebanon is one of the 72 countries where the LGBT status is still criminalized. At the same time, I'm also a regional representative in Inter Pride, which is a group that brings together Pride organizers from all over the world. And we are throwing a global Pride on Saturday. We're super thrilled about it. We're having about more than 1,500 video submissions of Pride, but also from organizations and especially individuals, young ones, from all over the world. Like we've covered more than 30 languages, more than 7 continents, including Antarctica. So it's just immense. This is a 24-hour broadcast that's taking place on YouTube and on many other channels. And it happened because large gatherings are suspended because of COVID. So Pride organizers came together and did what they can do. It's quite exciting and thrilling, and we are very excited about it because we have the possibility to highlight contributions from all over the world. Submissions were pouring, engagement amazing, and it's a digital event. And therefore we do take care about safety, security, like online safety and security. And it's quite cool what's happening, and the impact is expected to be huge. And yeah.
I think you said it. That's a very exciting work, and that is going to have a huge impact. It's really easy to get lost in a very US-centric Pride point of view. So it's a blessing to have you here to give us a bit of an international perspective.
Listen, at the end of the day, the US is like 380 million people. So it's not a country, it's a continent. And therefore, it's okay that you have a lot of submissions coming from the US and a lot of a US presence. And it's up to all of us to make a place for all of us, and to bring also people who cannot afford the same amount of visibility that we can have. And I believe that we very often fail to do so. We get caught up in little details with a lot of internal problems and disputes. But at the end of the day, when you see submissions that we managed to get from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iran, imagine we have a fantastic video of Iranian LGBTIQ plus individuals who are walking through the cities and towns of Iran and telling their stories. It's super moving. You have beautiful contributions from Palestine, Egypt, from North Africa, beautiful work from Tbilisi Pride, Pakistan. So it's just thrilling to see all these countries truly submit content together.
I can't wait to see it. Saturday.
Yeah.
Brianna, hello.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us. I would love to hear a bit about you and the work you're doing over at the Anti Violence Project.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm honored to be on this panel with everybody doing such amazing work. My name is Brianna Silverberg. My pronouns are she and her. I am a community organizer at the New York City Anti Violence Project. ABP, we represent especially New York City's HIV affected and LGBTQ populations as a resource to help protect people against violence and to be there for survivors of violence. We see violence as broadly defined, so that both includes interpersonal and physical forms of violence, but also things like economic discrimination, racism, transphobia, homophobia in any form. So any of the ways that people can be experiencing these things, we try to be there for them. I work as an organizer. We have an organizing and advocacy department. So most of my work, I'm a trans woman personally, and a lot of my work focuses on trans communities, things like helping community members through barriers of like issues with the shelter system, trying to find ways to create pathways for trans folks and for queer folks to get payment opportunities, to get workforce development. And also I've been really involved in a lot of our work to decriminalize sex work in New York and to broaden the rights and resources available to folks in the sex trade, and folks who are discriminated against because they're perceived as being in the sex trade, which is also an important group. So yeah, and also it's worth noting that in addition to a lot of the work I do, ABP operates things like a 24-hour hotline in English and Spanish for anyone that ever needs it, that is a queer or HIV-affected survivor of violence. We provide short-term counseling, folks who can run you through things like your taxes, economic empowerment programs, and we also have a legal team in case folks need anything from like an order of protection to also allow their work, kind of unfortunately in the last couple of years, but it's like amazing they're doing it, has been focusing around things like providing, especially trans Latinx folks, help with asylum cases because of the incredible discrimination that they're facing and the difficulty of seeking asylum, especially in the Trump administration. I can go over all that again in the end for folks who want to go over that. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to talk more about these issues.
Thank you. Wow. I feel like we just covered so many different facets of the issues that face the broader LGBTQIA+ perspective around the world. So, you know, I'm coming from like the EFF point of view, where we focus on digital civil liberties and our rights online. You know, we often have this saying that when you go online, we make sure your rights go with you. That's like an EFF thing. So I want to like inspire some discussion about drawing the connection between these things. Some people have a hard time drawing the connections between like our lives online and our digital civil liberties, like the tangible lived realities that we and our communities face. So I'm curious to hear how some of you would draw the connections between those things, our virtual online selves and like the tangible material realities that we're facing or that our differing intersecting communities face.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I can get us started. So it's a great question. I personally see the online and offline as one and the same. And just, you know, one example, prospective employers are buying data about us, right, from third-party data brokers. So I don't know, potential employer knowing you're prone to depression or, you know, or sexual identity perhaps could deter a prospective employer from hiring you. So that's one like very real example that I have to get us started. And then also obviously online harassment. It can start online and translate into the physical world, right, in a snap. And I'm sure the other panelists have excellent additional points on this, so I'll yield the floor.
I think first of all, we got to know that tech and being online is an actual privilege. Mm-hmm. It is an actual, for poor people, we specifically learned this in this COVID-19 with our students. There are some students who, when they go home, they don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to computers. They don't have access to these things. So we got to know that even speaking from a tech perspective and being online is a privilege that some of us don't have. And so I remember when we did our assessment for our community around COVID, there were some seniors, trans seniors who they weren't online. They didn't know how to navigate online. So therefore they didn't have access to the information about COVID the way that people online did. And even, I don't know if we can cuss, but shit. I think even us, was so much information that it was hard to know how to navigate, you know, should we wear a mask? Is mask effective? Is it not effective? All these kind of different kind of, messaging, but some of our trans seniors weren't even getting the messages because they didn't have access to online. So knowing that, you know, even being online is a privilege, and we have to make sure that, I know at our organization, we make sure that when we are sending out messaging around COVID, when we're sending around messages around programming that we're doing, we making sure that some people we are literally calling calling to let them know what we're going on. So if they are part of a group, they can spread the message and know that just online is not just the only tool. You know, it's the more progressive tool, but we have to make sure that our marginalized people who don't have access to tech and online because of their poverty level, because of their work, because of or being underpaid, which we know a lot of in the trans community, where, you know, statistics show that we are a lot of times underpaid or unemployed. So, you know, even when we talk about sex workers, there was incidents where people couldn't, people were traveling while this pandemic started to happen. And so, you know, they could have been in a risk situation where, hey, I'm risking all my money to be able to make, you know, to get some clients in this particular city. And then this pandemic happened and they can't fly back home. There were some people that were stuck and couldn't pay for their phone and it just was some dire situations out here. And so tech wasn't helping them in that situation. So I just wanted to kind of shine a light on the privilege of tech and being online. Yes, that's it.
I mean, thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
We forget that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about that. You know, I am currently, you know, working on this docu series about coronavirus, and I'm interviewing a lot of different people. And thank you, Diamond, for your words. I appreciate that. And you know, a few things that were taken away from the conversation is the balance of life is getting really difficult for people. So everyone who has moved onto online work, as in sex workers, they're realizing two things. One, it's not all made equal. Just because you can do physical work does not mean that it just automatically transfers into digital space. You know, to be an OnlyFans creator, for example, takes certain skills and technical knowledge and also material that some people just do not have access to. And another thing is balancing life. So people are finding that, like, when does work start, end, and begin? When does it happen? When do I wake up and make my bed my stage? When does this happen? You know, if I'm having a low day, you know, maybe I can't get out of bed. Maybe so that means that my office is now inaccessible. We're having these conversations of like, okay, so when do I log in? When do I log out? When there's always upward mobility presented in digital space, when do we start and stop? And so that's been something that's been detrimental to the health of sex workers navigating online sex work and the balance of normal life, right? I'm finding that we are not protected in digital space the same way that people have understandings in physical space. So I interviewed someone named Samantha Minks, and she's an amazing person, and she's a stripper who worked in Midtown for a while. And she was saying now she does her OnlyFans stuff because of COVID-19. And she was giving me a story. I said, what's the difference between safety and protection in physical space versus digital space? What does that look like? And she was giving me a story of, okay, so if I get out of the club and I'm walking towards the train, when I get out, people see me. People see me leaving. People see who I am. They know who I am. And there was an instance where she was getting out of the car and a client was waiting around. A client of the strip club was waiting around the corner. And when she got around the corner, they snatched her and put her into a taxi. And because she was in physical space, she was able to say to the taxi person, hey, I don't know this person. I'm not safe. I need to get out. And they were able to use harm reduction tactics to get out and make sure they got home safely. But digital space, you know, she was saying there's always someone lurking behind the corner. There's so much tech literacy that needs to happen within the sex work community, within marginalized communities, to understand how to protect ourselves in the same way that we have been learned and conditioned to protect ourselves in physical space. Because there's a lot of parallels between the racism, transphobia, homophobia, fucking oppression, excuse my language, oppression and attacks that happen in physical space that happen in digital space. But there's a lag in education. Everyone's not understanding how to protect themselves. And like we said, it's a privilege to even be here having this conversation tuned into Zoom. That's a privilege in itself. And so understanding that we feel disconnected, we feel desensitized. We need to practice radical thoughtfulness when it comes to marginalized communities navigating digital space and physical space. Because a lot of people who are privileged are navigating digital space like kumbaya, this is so great. Ooh, Twitter, Instagram, raw. but there's a lot of people who are going out into the world every single freaking day without protections, and they are scared and they need help. And we are unable to understand how to help them. And we need to know how. And so that's how I feel the connection between this disconnection between physical understanding and digital understanding of violence, harm, and etc. So, yeah.
Thank you. You touched on tech literacy there, and that really is close to my heart. I think because of our shared work with Hacking Hustling, I really appreciate the work that you're doing there to like generate tech literacy rather than assuming that everyone has that. Because as Diamond brought up, like it is a privilege to first have access to technology, and then it's another added level of privilege on top of that to have the literacy to know how to navigate technology safely. And people take that for granted. We're like so close to moving into the Q&A portion, but like I don't want to stop. I just want to ask one more thing before we like go into the audience participation part, because something that like has been on my mind that's come up while organizing this, you know, I think we're all like painfully aware that every year as like Pride Month comes around, it becomes like all of a sudden everyone comes out of the woodwork to perform these gestures of LGBTQ allyship, and they feel like shallow and performative, and they rarely seem to actually affect improving the material conditions for our communities. And like I'm also painfully aware inside like working in or like near big tech, you know, as like the monolithic industry, that they're often like one of the worst offenders of this kind of fake, shallow allyship. So I'm curious to hear how you all would frame like positive or generous allyship.
I mean, I would certainly think that it's tied to, and this is a recurring theme, like material opportunities for people, whether that be in skill development or, you know, actual just directly giving funds. I mean, one of the things that's really depressing, especially, you know, in like organizing work, is that people will always find a way to dilute just directly giving money to people. And it's always such an upwards battle to find ways to do that. You know, like I could certainly speak from the eye saying that like I work in, you know, a nonprofit system that largely runs off of things like grants. You know, like there are ways that people try to create steps between what a person has to do to sort of directly get money when not having money is the biggest barrier to folks being able to increase their earning potential or what have you. And, you know, I could just say, like, I participated, you know, in the work that we do with the Anti Violence Project. December 2018, we came out with a report on economic discrimination against trans and gender nonconforming folks in New York City. And this was New York City alone. And the unemployment rate was 3 times higher than it was for the general population. And that's in New York City, which is supposed to be this sort of like, you know, shining city on a hill, like the best possible place to be trans. And that's how hard it was. So what I would definitely look towards and encourage is when we see folks show out to Pride, you know, wherever they are, that tends to mean things like participating in a parade with their employees maybe, and then also stuff like having like booths, you know, in the sort of like street fair festival stuff like that. I think that it would be much more encouraging to see things like development of internship programs and things like that, and finding ways that we can provide the opportunities to folks that haven't had them before, and making, you know, the summer about that, it goes much further, spending lots of money on food.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I caught the last part of what you were saying. There was a little bit of
Oh, sorry.
expected.
The end of my statement was that if people gave like job development programs and also just directly contributed funds and encourage people to do that, that goes much further than, you know, the exorbitant amounts of money that people spend to do things like have a float at a parade. I have helped do the registration of those. They are incredibly expensive. Just save yourself the time and don't do it. And just pay people. It's a much better way to get the point across, and they will appreciate it more.
Agreed. Anyone else have any thoughts on this before we move into the Q&A?
Yeah, I do too, after Diamond.
Sure, yeah.
I was gonna let Hedy, because Hedy hadn't talked.
I wanted to touch on several points that were raised. You know, when you said, when do we start and when do we stop working? Oh God, that's the million-dollar question. And, you know, it's not only now during COVID, but like in a connected world where the line between our so-called offline world and the online world is getting much more porous. So literally, when do we draw the line? Now the whole world is somehow going exclusively online because of COVID restriction. The question is, what are we going to do later on, like in the upcoming events and our upcoming activities? Are we going simply to resume our offline world and use the online access as being a complementary thing? Or are we going to think our strategies, our work is in a much more connected way between the offline and the online? We spoke about, when we speak about the online world also, we do have this terrible amount of fake news, disinformation that is rampant and around, and that's just staggering. Like, and the trolling you get, like sometimes you wonder, are you going to focus on answering trolls or are you going to keep doing whatever you're doing? And it's like, if you don't answer, you may be branded as a dismissive person, or worse, as a dismissive organization. At the same time, you really need to put your time working, getting things done. And then when we speak about, when we go online, I was, you know, the same way we teach at schools how we behave when there is a fire, or where there is an earthquake. I believe it's very important that we start teaching in our schools, centers, institutions, how to be safe online. And this is something that we really take for granted most of the time. Like all the leftovers that we keep after us in our emails and so on is just huge. Like earlier today, we launched on the Global Pride website. I keep on referring to it because, you know, it's so much in the brain. You know, these safety guidelines that are very important. And, you know, when you look at the emerging generation of people who want to do social change, like they are babies, they are young people. And we must think in a way to protect them, to at least provide them with tools for them to be able to protect themselves. The EFF has this beautiful project that allows, for example, the queer individuals to follow some steps to be safe online and so on. And this is something that we must expand because like the emails we use, the passwords we use, the porosity of our usernames and so on, all this creating a lot of threats for people to move, you know, to tap into. And finally, when it comes to money, you know, when we speak, we often blame prides of being very like to sell the LGBT matters to corporations. And while we were discussing these things, like organizing events, running institutions require funds. What do we do? And then, like a group of friends and I were thinking, like, okay, the moment a company, the moment a corporation is being visible on a Pride or being visible on an LGBTIQ plus sex work initiative, etc. Yes, they want to get their return on investment. They want to get the visibility, their media, them looking cool and so on. But also what they do is by publicly being present in our work, they are committing themselves to what we do. And then it is up to us to press their buttons and tell them, hello, it's not only during June that you participate and you be present. We want you to, you know, to do something. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who works in a finance company in London. I was telling him, why don't you establish an LGBTIQ plus or a gender and sexual diversity caucus or committee or employer staff group, and then you tell your company that this is a list of 7, 8, 9, 10 things that you would like the company to address. And you accompany the company throughout a year from a pride to another to make sure that these points are implemented. So what do you think of this strategy? Diamond, Brianna?
I think everybody has hit on so many points. I feel like we have to get out of this mind. We are working within a system. We are working within a system with rules that more than likely the rules are racist, they are sexist, they are all these systems that we all talk about in activist work. And so since we're working within the system, if we're trying to dismantle it, we have to be very, very intentional and creative in ways that we do things to dismantle the system. So when we talk about paying people for their work, you don't know how many times this month I have gotten people coming, I'm going to say names because that's who I am. Texas Democrats hit me up and we're like, we want to center the trans voice and we want you to come speak about the issues around transness at this and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, is there a budget or an honorarium that's coming with this situation? She was like, oh no, we just wanted to be able to, just give you our platform and the exposure to put the, I can't go to my rent people and say, can I pay you this month in exposure? I can't do that. They're gonna say, okay, girl, yeah, right. That's just what it is. I can't go to them and do that. So she was so nice. And she was like, oh, we don't have the budget and blah, 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 blah. I was like, but y'all paid $20,000 on a float. Y'all will pay this, but you can't give me $2,500 to come speak. Like, you have to be more creative in how you get to people, in how you bring people, because you can't tell me that you care about trans lives if you can't give me something tangible to survive. If you can't give me something I can actually use in survival, how can you want, it's performative. And I have so many people coming to me, particularly in June, because it's Pride Month, that are, I want you to do this for free. We care about trans lives. We want to look like we care about trans lives by putting a trans person on the panel, by putting a trans person taking some pictures. My homegirl did a I'm not gonna say her name, but there was a campaign with Torrid recently, and they were gonna do this big thing, rolling her out. This is the first trans person to do this, and blah, blah, blah. When the push came to shove, they said, we might get a backlash. But we're not gonna do the big rollout that we thought we were gonna do. We're just gonna put you on our Instagram story. And so now you got her feeling insecure, like she's not enough. If this is not the time to support trans people, then when is the time? But then you got a total different person, Calvin Klein, that has a whole billboard of a non-binary person in the middle of New York City showing love. So we cannot no longer let allies give us this kind of pseudo allyship. We have to hold them accountable. We have to be creative about how you show up in our lives. Are you giving us these trainings to tech? Are you giving us helping us get access to the tech and actually giving us access to resources and giving us access to knowing how to use this tech? You've got to be creative. You cannot sit and work in the same system, because I don't want to talk too much, but think about cops. Everybody talk about cops and, oh, it's so many good cops out here. My uncle is a cop and he's so good. He's such a good person. But sweetie, if he signed up to be a cop in a bad system, he is going to be forced at some point to decide, am I going to be a bad cop or a good cop to keep my job? He's going to be in a situation where he has to choose to be a bad cop to be a cop. And so in the nonprofit industrial complex, in tech, in any system that you work under, you have to choose to do the right thing and be intentional about being a good person and having integrity. If you're going to work within the system, you're going to have to say, okay, I'm not going to go and do this the way, the old school way we used to do it, because we know that that's wrong. We have to do it in creative and more inventful ways. And that's why when you bring up young people have pushed the movement. When we talk about SNCC in the civil rights movement, when we talk about it was young people, yes, because of respectability politics, we put Martin Luther King, the preacher, the minister, the family man, and adulterer, up on the pedestal because that's respectable. We had to do that. But it was the kids, it was the Black Panther Party movement that was bringing in WIC programs that we are using today, that was bringing in SNAP programs, these socialist type of programs that we were bringing in because they were young and they would think of creative ways to help the community and not, they weren't stuck in old ways. But yes, I'm sorry, I'm preaching.
Don't apologize. That would,
Never apologize, ever.
Yeah. Thank you for saying all of that.
So in other terms, it's like in politics, you have to tell people what to do, whether they're organizations, funders, and so on. You just literally have to do it all for them and then tell them, okay, put it in your name, put your logo, but just do this. Like, it's exactly like political work, especially that, you know, you cannot simply change a system overnight. So you really have to, at a certain moment, to do performative politics for you to be within this structure and to have your integrity, your strength, and your courage, and hopefully support for you to be able to make the decision of being a good cop, even when all odds are against you. It's difficult, it's challenging, but eventually we fight, we throw stones, and also at the same time, we need individuals from within that make things change.
Yeah, yeah. I echo all of that. Do we have time for me to answer or no? I don't want to take up.
Yeah. Give us a couple of your thoughts, and then we should probably move on to the Q&A because I bet some people are chomping at the bit to get us some questions.
Okay, I'll just make my last points that I love to make. So I'm a big believer in talking about upward mobility in digital space, whether it be physical, whether it be emotionally, whether it be financially, whether it be socially. I think that's a great framework to frame it in, because people are so, sex work, that's financial upward mobility. That's, you being an influencer is social upward mobility. So I think when we talk about allyship and what that looks like in digital spaces, understand that most technology has a moral judgment on these platforms, right? So when cis and heterosexual white men create these digital worlds, you see these moral judgments displayed with how we are depicted and how we get to engage in digital space. So I do echo Hadi's point of this is great, pride and all this stuff, and the corporates are organizing around it, and that is great. But understand that the reason is because we need a space that is for us, by us. The only reason these corporations are involved in these pride conversations is because if they cannot profit off of us, they do not care about us. And so by engaging in these spaces, we're engaging in the ownership of our identities and how they can profit from it socially and financially. And so I think how can allies, show up for us, I think, is accountability and also understanding your individual impact. What are you doing as a person to impact the situation? And so tuning into what do we really actually need from you, and understanding that physical space is echoed in digital space. So just the same way that they were, to be a cop, you have to make bad choices. It's the same way that we're navigating these spaces. So that's just the last point I wanted to make, and that's it. Okay.
Thank you for making them, though. It needs to be said again, like it's wild how it can feel radical to say things that are just like the truth, so I'm really grateful that you all are here to spread that radical word. So I'm going to move into the Q&A. We got a question rolling in that I think is, anyone could answer here. The question is, can you say more on how your organizing work has shifted given COVID-19 constraints? How has moving more online impacted your community work? That's open to anyone who wishes to answer.
I would just say that for me, in the work that I do at ABP as an organizer, the short of it is that one thing I feel really grateful for, I don't think that this is true across all queer nonprofits or nonprofits in general. I think that we've been really lucky that we've been able to move our funders to that thing I was talking about before, those barriers. Like, people will give nonprofits money, they will create huge barriers to how that money is distributed. I think that I feel really fortunate and grateful that we were able to create way more opportunities for people to have very low barrier or much lower barriers than normal to get paid. So not to put it on the spot, like, but Essex participated in a webinar that we did where participants where Essex was able to get paid as a facilitator, but also like all of our participants were able to get paid for participating, and it was for folks in the sex industry, especially not aimed at queer folks. And I feel really grateful that that's something that's been able to happen, to like be able to convince people that because times are so dire, that they should think much more clearly about like what we should be doing in the work and how we should be creating opportunities. I really hope that we can keep that energy, you know, in the hopeful, amazing day when this is all over. Because, you know, it would be sad if we were only able to do that during like the darkest, hardest months. The other thing I would quickly say is just that there's a fair amount of people I've been able to keep in consistent contact with, but one of the scariest things is that I work with a fair amount of people who are like trans and have been incarcerated for long periods of time and who are not used to using the internet and are both older and are used to a world where like that's not a really present part of their life. And so the way that we are not able to stay in touch with folks, especially if they don't have their own home, if they live in the shelter system and they're not using the internet and stuff like that, you know, that's really worrying. And so I would say that the flip side of things is like that this makes it so clear how we have to develop more tools to get the internet as cheaply as possible and as simply as possible, as many communication tools really, into the hands of folks who are denied them, you know, so that we can maintain that connection and that work. Because it's horrifying when, you know, folks who might need help aren't able to get in touch with folks who potentially can be a part of that.
Yeah, and on that note about the digital divide, my organization Access Now, in conjunction with a lot of other groups in DC, like Media Justice, and many others, have been pushing the Federal Communications Commission and members of Congress to provide more funding to ensure that folks have access to broadband so they can access the internet. So not only do we need more access, we also need it to be affordable, right? So, and that's an issue. Thank you so much, Diamond, for highlighting that. That's really been brought to light given the pandemic. So hopefully we see responses soon in the next COVID stimulus package.
For me, what it has brought to light is that our lives is the luxury of being cisgender. The privilege of being cisgender is that y'all, some of the things that y'all are dealing with COVID is what we have dealt with, being isolated, and not because of a disease, but because of, you know, how the frequency of incidents of violence on the subway, incidents of violence at work. Some trans folks don't, you know, they literally don't leave the house and they only do involuntarily do sex work because they might want to do something else, but they have to do this because they don't want to deal with the things with not being protected at work. Now we have some protection because of, you know, the SCOTUS ruling a little bit, but you know, implementing that is a whole different thing too. But the being isolated, being online, being forced to date online because you know, you gotta disclose and the safety that comes with dating, that kind of isolation is kind of life we live anyway. and so that connection. But also when we did our assessment and put out a call to see what trans folks need, it was the same exact thing, except there was a little bit more barriers with COVID, you know, getting hormones, getting access to doctors. If you're in a rural area, the doctors that are closed, or that you normally, the doctor, there might be an emergency thing open, but the doctor that you're comfortable with because they are educated about transness may not be at the emergency room. And so it's for us, we needed to have a direct contact with sex workers. We needed to have direct contact with older trans people. We needed to have a direct contact and a direct help. So what we did, we just gave direct money. We were like, hey, we're gonna do small mini grants, and whatever it's no barriers. Like Brianna said, you tell us what you need, and we're gonna try to give you small mini grants to help you get your phone on because you're stuck in Vegas. Get your whatever situation that they were in. Once they told us about it, we were like, here, boom, 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 boom. We put out a call. We were able to, we got 100 in, the initial one, we got 154, but once we reopened it, it went all the way up to 700, our Black Trans Relief Fund. And we even had, just a side note, we even had cis people trying to apply for our grants. And we were like, whoa. But we end up being able to help maybe a third of it, but we're working to get even more people. And soon as, God, because of this Black Lives Matter protest, and this is sad to say, because of the Black Lives Matter protest, because of the trans woman being attacked in Minneapolis when the protest was going on, the video went viral. People literally have been because of that, people have been donating and giving da-da-da-da-da. But when we were doing our COVID fund, the positive, nobody was giving. But soon as somebody get murdered, somebody get killed, somebody get beat, it's like, oh, we want to throw money. And so now we're getting a little funds to be able to help people in their lives. But, it seems like for us, we've noticed that we have to be beat, raped, murdered, hit, killed, in all the other words, that's like permanent or traumatized, in order for somebody to kind of step up. When we're doing positive work that invests in our lives, it's almost like crickets. So that's what I see in COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll make my comment quick. What I'm seeing as far as organizing during COVID is cash is king. Cash is a harm reduction tactic. Okay, giving cash to people, marginalized people, is a tactic. I've been hoping to do some work with Red Canary's song and speaking with the Asian American sex work community and how impacted they are deeply, not just beyond February, all of us March, April. No, it's been in the Asian community since January. People have been avoiding services and businesses. And so understanding what that means, and also just going out and protesting, and having this weird understanding of physical work, people are returning back to sex work and people are, protesting, people are doing all these things. And it's difficult to understand, and just making sure that sex workers aren't erased in conversations around defunding the police. We need to defund Vice. Vice is a harmful, violent, disgusting part of the NYPD that makes judgments off of morality. They are despicable. They hurt BIPOCs, transgender people, sex workers, and they need to be defunded. And so part of my work recently has just been infiltrating these groups that are defunding, doing the marches. I have been hounding this group to be able to speak at the march that's happening on Monday in New York, to be able to say defund NYPD on behalf of sex workers, transgender people, etc. Because sex workers' voices are being lost in these conversations around social change and social movements. And it is absolutely sex workers. When you protect sex workers, you protect yourself, because we are at the margins of this society. And so I find that online, everyone's a Twitter activist, everyone's like, kumbaya, tweet, change.org, all this stuff. But I definitely know who I see out there every day marching, the people, and Gen Zers, these kids, when I tell you, I go out to these marches, these 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, they know more than anybody, and they are ready to fight. And it is just it's just beyond, when I say, oh yeah, I'm a sex work activist, they go, okay, great. It's not like what do you mean? I'm confused. They're like, no, we're fighting to dismantle all of this shit. And so that's what I'm saying. And the difference of my organizing is definitely an online camaraderie, but definitely a physical camaraderie that definitely ignores, I think, some of the COVID safety things. Because when you're protesting with 15,000 people, I don't know. People are wearing masks, but at that point, there's so many people, you're not necessarily using, the best safety practices. There's no such thing as social distancing in a protest, right? And so I'm seeing this kind of disconnect between the scarcity of the conversation of COVID in digital space of, oh my God, you're wearing masks, but I'm out here protesting, and people are, it's just it's as if it's everyday life. But I will say I'm happy to see Pride. I was mentioning this to Daly earlier. I'm happy to see Pride turn back into a protest, which is what the fuck it was from the jump. And that's what it should be. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how Pride takes place in New York City on Sunday, and what conversations, who gets to speak, what the protest even looks like, because it's fuck all the corporate bullshit now. It's actually showing up for the people who've been doing the work. So, okay, sorry. That's it. I'll stop now.
You're good. Thank you. So we only have a few minutes left on the stream, but I want to give one more opportunity for another question before we wrap it all up. So if y'all could chime in with just like a couple of words. This is more of an optimistic question now about what is your dream for a better internet, and what do you think the average person can do to make things better?
If I may, COVID just made us rely more on the internet. And it's clear that the problems that we face online are the same problems that we see offline. So it's like, these are not separate problems, struggles, but it's literally like an online and offline facet of the same problem. Like the street hate speech, you would see it online. And the same way we want to have better policies to make people more respectful and to have, we need to have similar things to make our online space less abrasive than what it is today. How can we do this for LGBTIQ plus people, or how can we do this with LGBTIQ plus people? I believe we could start communicating on good practice. We can also raise awareness on people who are using the internet, and raise our voice when we expect a looming problem at the horizon. So we don't have to wait until there is a dramatic incident for money to come and for things to happen. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We have an amazing heritage from all the work that has been done before us on any societal work anywhere in the world. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Things are present, things are obvious. We're all big mouths, most of us at least, and we can really get things done. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
We're actually at we're at the hour now. So if there's any other last words about that question, get them in now. But I also want to give you all an opportunity to, okay, I'm getting word that we can go a few minutes longer if we want. So I would actually love to hear from the rest of you, if you are up for it, about how you envision a better internet. Yeah.
Okay, make it more accessible. Be creative, as I said earlier, be creative about your policy work, and be creative about your algorithms, because sometimes algorithms can be unintentionally racist. It can be unintentionally, marginalizing. So when you see those kind of disparities happening on your platform, change them. Be quick about it. I'm a YouTuber. There was some algorithm change that took me from making $1,500 a month to $350 a month. And so if I'm really dependent on this income because I'm putting so much work into my videos and and all that, then I need you to be really, really quickly to fix this issue where it's, now they're being sued because the algorithm is racist. So make sure you are quick to fix the issues that are having in regards to your algorithms and policies, and make it more accessible. And, if it's in your upper staff, in your executive staff, if it's only white people there, then you have a problem. You need to bring some people who, who can actually, talk to the people, a wide range of people that you can impact by the technology that you have. So yes.
So I have 3 things. 1, for us, by us. We need our own freaking spaces created for us, by us. That is how technology works. It is created by the designer to implement the best way to better someone's life. That's what we need. 2, tech equity for femmes. We do the most in digital space. We deserve the most equity, and I'm not saying it, and that is one of my life goals is for tech equity for femmes, okay? And then 3, white men need to step down. In order to change the white supremacy aspect that involves big tech, white people have to step down. Step down, give up your job. You cannot impact all the change you think you're gonna make when you look around the room and you're all white. You have to step down. Someone else has to take your place. Why is technology such a white-dominated space that is not held to the same standards of every other space? If we were in the medical field and 90% of the I hope that's not an incorrect quote, but if 90% of the doctors were white, that would be a huge health crisis. That would be a problem. We have a crisis in technology with white supremacy because as of now, it is designed by cis heterosexual white men. So they need to step down, and we need people of color, we need Black people, and we need women identifying people, non-gender non-conforming people. We need those people designing the technology to reflect the world that we actually see and that we actually engage in. You cannot expect me, a Black woman, to go into a space designed by a white man in any scenario and think it's going to be safe and healthy and productive for me, because it's not. So that's the hard answer that everyone needs to hear, that they don't want to hear, is that you actually need to step down and give your seat up for someone else to take it. And so that's what I think will be a better internet, is less white men.
Yeah, +1 to everything that's been said. Just to add a few more things, envisioning a better internet world, if you will. Encryption in the United States is under attack, so I think it's really important that we be vigilant in ensuring that encrypted platforms are alive and well and kept safe. Also, I don't know if folks are familiar, there's Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act it's a double-edged sword, but part of what it does is it makes it possible, right? It removes the gatekeepers in a way so folks can freely express themselves online. And it's being threatened in the US Congress, which would lead to over-policing of content, largely by marginalized people likely. So I hope that this important provision survives.
Yeah, and I'd love to give that last plug before we finish about how to call your senator and do that whole shebang that we have from Hacking Hustling before we end the call, because today is the day.
Yeah, we'll have a moment at the I give you all a moment to give your plugs and tell everyone where to go and how to support. But Brianna, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you have any thoughts about a better internet and how you envision that.
Yeah, certainly. I guess I love everything that's been mentioned, and I think the first 3 things that really stand out to me are accessibility, creating more platforms for folks to be able to access the internet and to try to make it as cheap as possible and as simple as possible, and to have a diverse set of ways for that to be possible. To make sure that marginalized folks are empowered to use the web and the different resources that are available. And also to make sure that on the flip side of that, that you're not empowering oppression and hateful folks. And that includes things like what Essex mentioned with the folks with financial power and the literal control over things. And also, the fact that so many platforms become tools to, for white supremacists and for transphobes, to take really seriously that we need to find a way to make the internet a safe and affirming place, and that those things have no space and that they shouldn't be treated, in such a privileged manner. I don't know if we're just going to instantly transition to our plugs, but I was just going to say that if anyone ever needs anywhere to go, wait, this is backwards, isn't it? Because the number for ABP's hotline is 212-714-1141. Again, that's 212-714-1141. Yes, we're in New York City, but anyone from anywhere in the country, if you ever experience violence, yes, 212-714-1141. Someone just typed in our chat internally, and I'm like, yes, that is the number. That number, 24/7 in English and Spanish, is a hotline. If you are anywhere, it doesn't matter if you're in New York City or not, and you are a queer HIV-affected person, or you know someone who's experienced violence, and you want to talk to somebody who can help, who is a counselor, you know, who is into anti-violence and is honestly probably like is anti-police, like you can always call us. That's really the only plug that I want in case anyone needs to call that number.
Thank you for sharing that. And a perfect transition into the last part where we can all give our plugs and tell our wonderful viewers out there how to support us. Jennifer, you want to start or follow?
Sure, yeah. So quickly again, I'm with Access Now. We're a global human rights nonprofit, and I mentioned when I first spoke that we run the Digital Security Helpline, which is a pro bono service for users at risk. So anything from I don't know how to stay safe online and I need help, or I'm being threatened, I need help. We're happy to assist. We have 24/7 services available in 9 languages. So if those people are tuning in across the world, the email is help@accessnow.org.
Thank you.
Yep.
SX, tell us about that initiative you were just talking about and where else we can support you.
Yes, so where you can support me is everything SX Noir. That is my name. And I am working on a documentary that's coming out very soon called Corona Thoughts. That's THOTS, and I'm very excited to bring that to you all. And you can check out my podcast, give me a review. I love that so much. And my Cash App is SXBRAT. That is SXBRAT. And that's also my Venmo. So you know what I mean? Like, treat a Black woman today. And so I would love to talk to you all about the Earn It Act, okay? And so the Earn It Act is something very important. It stands for Eliminating Abusive or Rampant Neglect of Interactive Technologies with the purpose to prevent, reduce, and respond to online sexual exploitation of children. As we know, those in the sex industry, manipulation around psychology of sex trafficking and child abuse is often used as a way to invade our privacy and to end end-to-end encryption. And so what does this mean is that any website or tech platform that doesn't follow its list of best practices, which we have no idea what they were, will be stripped from the Section 230 rights will be stripped, allowing the platform to be sued for bankruptcy. And so we know for very small tech platforms, this is a major, major problem. And for BIPOCs, this is a big problem for us as well. And so what does this mean? It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, and all your digital private messages and accounts can be searched without warrant. It ends up forcing platforms to censor the protected speech of their user. In an earlier draft of the bill, it even suggested that all messages should be screened using law enforcement approved technology. More technology means more policing, and we understand that wholeheartedly. So what can you do? Call your senator, especially if they are on the list of those voting on Earn It, and share what's going on. We have a script that we have shared across the social media platforms on hackinghustling.org, also the Twitter and Instagram Hacking Hustling. And so, you know, it's important, just like with Foster Sesta, to kind of turn up and call your senator. It takes 5 minutes and tell them to not vote on the Earn It Act, okay? So I think that's really, really important, especially since we're all here today. And so that's my last call to action. And again, I'm SX Noir, and thank you all for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Hadi or Diamond, whoever would like to go.
I will put all my 2 links. It's just to the podcast. If you want to take a listen, we have great conversation. Check that out every week on Thursday. The episode we just did for this week just went up as we were speaking. And blacktranswomen.org. I put the donation link there. We have a program around housing and getting trans women out of emergency violence situation. We just helped India Dior, the one who was attacked in the viral video. We definitely got her out of her situation and was able to get like $20,000 for her relocation or and any kind of protection that she needs for where she lives. So that is our Seeds program, and we really have been just kind of fleshing it out, and we need funds to do that. So if you're trying to donate, you can do that. But we have tons of programming as far as empowerment, but that's my initial initiative as the executive director. So if you want to learn more, those are my links. And you can find me at Diamond Styles at anything, no space in the middle between, on any platform, Instagram, Twitter, anything, and Cash App. But yes,
Nice, thank you. Yeah, everyone should listen to Marsha's Plate. Seriously, it's like the best out there. Hadi.
I'm very humbled by this conversation. All the topics that we discuss, you know, it's very large, it's very wide. Thank you for sharing all this information. You know, it's quite a big responsibility when you are a Pride organizer to absorb all what's being said, to get people to work with you, to create or to contribute to creating a space where people can feel that concerns find a place to be discussed, solutions explored, tested, and so on. You know, when it comes to asking for support, I guess it's important that we keep in mind that there are 72 countries that still criminalize LGBT status, and some of them punish it by death. Some of these countries are participating in the upcoming Global Pride, so you can see the tension and the stress about it. A lot of our environment are not pleasant to exist in. They are quite a daily struggle, and it's important that we keep our channels of communication open among all of us and learn from each other's experiences. So once again, I'm very grateful to all what has been discussed, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Hadi. And thank you all for joining. This was a thrilling discussion to have, and much needed, and hopefully it will inspire more. So with that, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you around.
Thank you. Bye-bye.